and then it's back to and then it's you know, you get my without using any proper words in the English language, you get the idea. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Audiophile. My name's John, and his name's Andy. Coming into Harrisburg, never seen a body look so tense. Tell me, Mr. Kennedy, have you ever seen a cloud so dense? Coming into Cleveland, riding in the van with severed dough. Tell me, Mr. Kennedy, have you ever seen the clouds so low? More on that later. But first, we have a track to listen to, selected by brother Andy. What have you got?
Well, do you recall back on the Into the Music days, I offered you up a band. We only did one track by them. They were a band called Band of Skulls.
Yes, I remember.
If it helps, the track was called Bruises.
Yes, I remember. They were. Oh, yes, I do remember. So, female had a really nice voice, but they were
Yeah.
like singing with males as well. And I also remember I was really shocked to discover they were a British band,
Yes. Yeah.
and they were still going. And I was thinking, why have I still never heard of them after they've been going like 20 years or something stupid? But anyway, yeah, or 15 or 10 or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah. They've been around for a while for sure. Um, well, I gave you a track off of their album Sweet Sour. This is the album that precedes that. And it is a track that is off of it called Death by Diamonds and Pearls.
Okay.
Yeah, interesting, right? So please go off, give it a listen. I'd be interested to hear what you have to say. It's been some time between the two reactions, obviously, at this point. What your second dip into the Band of Skulls water is like, and if you enjoy what you hear.
Okie dokie. Slightly familiar. I don't think I've heard this before, but that sounds slightly familiar.
She grew up in a nice neighborhood, but it didn't do her no good. 'Cause she's just a sum of her influence, and I can't tell you the difference by the cracked windscreen on her car. Stomach is down.
So it's a good opening. You've got these bit of a smidgen I detect of White Stripes influence here. That vocals, it's got a sort of sulkiness about it and disdain. I don't know if it's two people singing or if I think it's double tracked actually. Sounds really close to each other. But you got a classic sort of guitar and drums and the way they're put together, working off each other. But just as I stopped in there and I heard this really nice sort of bass sort of rumble through. So I'm just going to take that back a sec. But it's, yeah, good stuff.
'Cause she's just a sum of her influence, and I can't tell you the difference by the cracked windscreen on her car.
Nice.
Stomach is telling you, don't know how lucky you are. You're just like the rest of those girls. They're all death by diamonds and death by diamonds and death by diamonds and death by diamonds and pearls. Death by diamonds and pearls.
That, I believe, is the chorus. It's quite a short song, this. Just as I heard that, these are like nice, grand power chords there. I was just picturing Jimmy Page And I could just imagine over the top, dun, 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 this really high piercing lead guitar coming real. I could just see that easily. Yes, it's got bits and pieces from other bands in there, but it's got a great sound, and that sort of dynamic relationship with the guitar and the drums mostly does, really sort of kickstarted the blues again, I think, in terms of that sound. So for all you want to say about Sir Jack White, he did a great job on that front. Yeah, this is good stuff.
You got your figure on nice, but the heart stays colder than ice. You got 25 grand on the bubble, and you're the one telling me that you don't think you're in trouble. I might be a fan of your insolence, but that don't make you the innocent. You're just like the rest of those girls. They're all dead by diamonds and dead by diamonds and dead by diamonds and dead by diamonds and pearls. Dead by diamonds and pearls. Dead by diamonds and pearls. Dead by diamonds and pearls.
Is that like I guess it's some sort of percussion, some bell or shaker, but it sounds like a really sickly, fucked up tambourine on its last legs. That's funny. I'm just going to go back a little bit. So they're playing around here. I was kind of expecting something to explode then, but they brought it back down and sort of arsing about. The sort of the progression, that verse before the chorus, then it was all everything was the drums and guitar together, dun, dun, dun. And it's almost like the musical equivalent of playing, what's the time, Mr. Wolf? And every time you turn around, it's a couple of steps closer. You turn back and they stop. They turn you back again, it's a couple of steps closer. That's what I pictured in my mind. It's cool. Bonzo. Wowza. That really could have gone on for another minute or two, couldn't it? I mean, come on. It was quite late to the party, that guitar solo. It was kind of similar to what I was imagining earlier on. Yeah, bit of Jimmy Page, quite a bit of Jack White, and all the influences that affected his sound. It's a great noise, isn't it? Yeah, that really sort of built up. I like the dynamics to it. I like the sound. As I remember, I'm not 100% sure on this, but this is a couple of years ago, but yeah, I think they're British, this band. This is such an American sound. Born of sort of Mississippi Delta blues. It's great. It's great. Right, let's get back and get the skinny from Andy.
So, what do you make of this track by Band of Skulls, Death by Diamonds and Pearls?
Yeah, interesting reference in the title there. Sadly, there was no TAF cap to be seen anywhere. the artist formerly known as Prince. Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
why they picked that, but it's because that's quite a while, but that's like early 90, 91, 92, 91, Diamonds and Pearls. But anyway, yeah, I don't know if there's imagery involved in that. To be fair, spoiler alert, I didn't pay any attention to the vocals, the lyrics at all. So anyway, he could have been saying he did something about laying down a load of money on the bubble, but that's about the only bit I heard. Which, depending, but I don't know if he was talking. It can mean various things there. I presume it's to do with poker, or at least betting. But there you go. So the track starts with this teasing little guitar pattern, and it has that sort of syncopated sort of structure to it that almost reminds you in a way of like a schoolyard chant or a taunt or something. So that anyway, and then in comes the drums and the vocals, and after about 10 seconds, I'm getting a wee smidgen of White Stripes influence, sort of
Oh,
circa,
it's just a wee.
sort of Elephant period.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's that classic guitar and drums, and they're sort of interplaying together, and creating the different sort of starting points for each one, much as Jack and Meg did to great effect. But in between the lines, slowly you start to notice, or I did, a really great prowling bass line that's really subtle. And it kind of like reminded me of like a shark's fin in shallow waters. You just get a bit of it, It's just really nice. Um, then we get to this the repeated title phrase, which I think is the chorus, and it comes again, so it must be. Within that, there are these extended like power chords, and as these expansive chords are ringing out, it's much more ringing than the sort of verse part of it. I just had this picture in my mind that this is quite Led Zeppelin, and wouldn't it be lovely if there would be a piercing guitar solo come over the top of this at this point? And it almost like could hear it in my head. Anyway, more on that later. So then we get into the next verse, and they sort of change it up slightly. It's what I call like punchy. So the guitar and the drums are punching out these little hits together, to the da da da, etc. So in terms of, I worked for a while in newspaper advertising, and it's what people would say, excellent use of white space, which is when you don't do very much in the advert and you leave the rest of it white, and then everyone pretends that you're not lazy, and it's very arty. And you can say the same about music. It's excellent use of white space in this. But it's almost the audio musical equivalent of playing. I don't know if you have this game in America. What's the time, Mr. Wolf?
If we do, it's not called that. I'll tell you that much right now.
So you have somebody who's the wolf, and you have people that are approaching him, and he turns his back, and you say, "What's the time, Mr. Wolf?" And he slowly says, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and then he'll turn around. And if you're moving, he gets you. If you
Okay.
stopped, and then he turns back again, and you've got to creep up and basically get it before he turns around. And this is the musical version of that. You're it's a bit closer. You turn your back again. And it's just real fun. The vocals also have that slightly. So I think it sounded to me because they were really similar. I think they were double tracked. The same vocal was double tracked rather than like two vocals, because there wasn't that hardly any difference between them. But they have that same sort of slightly sulky quality to them. It's a bit sort of pouty, and a bit sulky, and a bit sort of sort of full of disdain for the person or the subject or whatever. And it's nice how, and again, I didn't catch the actual words, but they scan through some of the lines nice and quickly, and it gets nice. It's quite nice. It's a pleasant thing to hear when it's done well. And then it's back to and they say, you get my, without using any proper words in the English language, you get the idea.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So we start to get from this punchy bit, this you get a certain amount of percussion, particularly like hi-hat and stuff, and some bass coming in to flesh out the gaps, and then all of a sudden another chorus is launched in exactly the same way. And as I'm thinking, when's Jimmy Page going to make his presence known? We get this sort of rather than it exploding, which I'm expecting it to do, it drops down again, and we get this cheeky little section that kind of mimics the intro. Again, it's sort of doing sort of bit with a guitar, um, and with it, company, and I had to revert. I think it's a bell shake or whatever, but it sounded like the most sickly tambourine you've ever heard in your life. Like it's down to its one, you know, three fingers and three toes. You know, it really hilarious sounding. It's great, but it just really sounded. And then before you know it, it suddenly goes full Bonzo on the drums, and it's
Yeah.
Animal smashing away, which is great. And we have arrived at, you know, proper Led Zepp time. And then around 2:30, I think it is, we get, for want of a better reference, Full Metal White Striped Jacket. um, I mean, in terms of, you know, reference, you can say Jack White, you can say all the people that influenced him as well. I mean, in terms of guitar work, it's as much like Buddy Guy as it is anyone else. It's fantastic, you know, and it's great. And Jimmy Page, obviously, and people like that. And it's this lovely searing sound, which is both pure and infected at the same time. Really nice quality to it. This,
Yeah.
the gig, the setup's just perfect. It has that lovely sound. Where this guitar feels like it could slice through solid steel, but it's also one of those things that could actually blow up in your hands at any second as well. Um, in the comics of 2000 AD, I know Judge Dredd had these things called stub guns that were like that. They were fantastic, but they also just blew up. So they're very dangerous. And that's exactly what this guitar solo was. Not suitably dangerous. Then we
Yeah.
have another quick flourish for just a few seconds. And just after the 3 minute, three and a bit, it's done. So
Mhm.
yeah, lovely stuff. Really great references to it. I was just thinking. I remember Bruises. There was some real. It was quite a sort of what's the word? It had momentum. The song before. I've just got an impression. I haven't listened to it again, but I remember having an impression. And there was this these semi sort of veiled references to sort of physical abuse. But I remember there's a female vocal and a male, at least one, that was singing together, and she had a really nice voice. I didn't hear anything of that, so it was quite a different sort of sound. Um, but again, really American sounding and shocking that they're British, because I remember you telling me that, and I was shocked at the time, and I still am.
Yeah.
I don't know when this came out, but you said this preceded it, and I got a vague idea in my memory that the one I heard before was like the early teens, 12 to
Yeah.
2012, 2014, something like that. So this is around a bit before. So this is still a good 10 years after Elephant anyway, you know,
Yep.
probably or around about that. But it's just, yeah, really interesting.
Awesome.
And to
Well,
be fact, sorry, just to finish, enough time had passed from Elephant and other stuff like that that there wasn't much around reflecting that sound. You know, it's enough 10 years, so there was plenty of it
mm,
around the early noughties, and then there wasn't, and then you get this again. So
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, there's definitely I'm sure that there is a demand for it at that point. I mean, at this
Yeah,
point, Jack was off doing his own thing or dabbling in the raconteurs, which is a bit of a different sound.
yeah,
So this takes you back to that true Detroit Rock City garage sound that they captured on Elephant, and you know during that. Go ahead.
yeah. Sorry, I did mention. I forgot to say in my reaction that when you boil it all down, it all comes back to Mississippi Delta anyway. You know.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So, yeah, awesome. I'm really glad you liked it. I'm a big fan of these guys, especially their first couple albums. I kind of just lost track of them as it tends to happen with bands, you know what I mean, after so long. But yeah, those first two albums are really, really good stuff. So anyway, let me jump into, I'll just touch on the band a little bit here. They haven't appeared on this channel, so I'll probably go over some stuff you might be familiar with, but a lot of stuff perhaps the audience isn't. So let's get into it. They are, as you mentioned, and are still surprised by, an English rock band. They are from Southampton. They're fronted by, yeah,
I
yeah.
was gonna guess Brighton. I was gonna guess
Yeah,
Brighton,
yeah.
but I was close. That's close.
Yeah, they're fronted by Russell Marsden on guitar and vocals, Emma Richardson on bass and vocals was with the band from 2002 to 2022, and Matt Hayward on drums was with the band from 2002 to 2016. So they are both previously members of the band. Emma is who you heard not only on the bass, but you heard her voice on Bruises that we checked out off the Sweet Sour album. AllMusic's James Christopher Monger called the band's music gritty, ferociously heavy indie rock and roll out of the mist of blues history, while John O'Brien on the very same website observed a scuzzy garage rock sound. The group formed after meeting in college, although Marsden and Hayward had been friends since high school. Band of Skulls released 5 studio albums, most recently Love Is All You Love in April 2019. Initially, the group played at nightclubs in the greater London area and recorded some demos under the name of Fleeing New York before changing their name briefly to Skulls. The summer of 2008 found the band in the US where there was already an American band with the same name. So November 2008, they became Band of Skulls. The band's original demos were recorded in Hayward's father's shed studio. So that's pretty, we've heard of basement studios. Now we have shed studios. Band of Skulls' debut album, Baby Darling Dollface Honey, distributed by Shangri-La Music, was released exclusively on iTunes Store on March 6, 2009. And that is this album. So there you have it. That debut 2009. It was then released. It then went through a general release on March 20th. Band of Skulls played at the South by Southwest Festival in early 2010 and toured the Midwest in March in support of Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, a band you and I are both familiar with and have discussed off camera. The band appeared on the French TV show Terra Tata, broadcast in March of 2010. Is that right? I saw you chuckle. Is it
I have no idea. It just sounded funny.
I thought maybe you had some familiarity and I just totally butchered that name. But yeah, it reads Terra Tata. And they performed there March 2010, where they covered the song Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones with the band John and Jane. In April 2010, they toured the US and Canada, followed by England in May 2010, including a sold-out show at the London Electric Ballroom. On June 28th of 2010, Band of Skulls supported the Dead Weather at the Roundhouse in London. Are you familiar with the Dead Weather?
Yes.
Okay, I've contemplated bringing them. I guess this is a little peek behind the curtain. This is how we ask each other what songs we should offer up. Okay, you've heard them before. So the next month, the band covered Goldfrapp's Strict Machine for Australian radio.
Really?
Yes. So
that's a good song.
Yeah, it is a good song. Man, some of the, I don't know, we've talked about this before, but you should really check out, I think it's called Like a Version, which is sort of like hosted on their BBC.
Oh, you have, you have mentioned this before.
Awesome takes. They really redo songs in different lights for the most part on there. It's interesting stuff, and it's a good way to learn about new up-and-coming bands too. So shout out Like a Version for people out there in the listening audience as well. Go check that out. They were also one of 3 bands who opened for Muse on September 4th, 2010 at Lancashire County Cricket Ground. In October 2010, they also toured to South Africa to play at the annual Rocking the Daisies Festival. Death by Diamonds and Pearls is the second track on Band of Skulls' debut album, Baby Darling Dollface Honey. The artwork of the album cover is based on the paintings by the bass player and vocalist Emma Richardson. And Baby Darling Dollface Honey was produced, recorded, and mixed by Ian Davenport, who'd worked with Supergrass and Badly Drawn Boy, and it was recorded at the Courtyard Studios in Oxfordshire and mixed at the House of Blues studio in Los Angeles. So a little bit here, a little bit there. The album debuted belatedly on the UK indie chart on the 27th of February 2010 at the 50th position. Critical reception to Baby Darling Dollface Honey was generally positive. In the UK, classic rock gave the album a 9 out of 10. stating that the entire collection crackles with an urgency and authenticity that's as rare as it is desirable. C.L. Chafin of Pop Matters said this of the album: tracks like I Know What I Am, Light of the Morning, another really good one, Death by Diamonds and Pearls, and a few others are real gems. Blistering, echoey stomp-alongs. It's not hard to picture the band lovingly tattooed, belting them out in a moldy basement to a room of a few dozen smelly degenerates. They're real, and that's what the band does best, Chafin would go on to say. There isn't a bad song on Baby Darling Dollface Honey. Joel Scrubbles over at DIY reviewed the track and wrote this: let's get it out of the way quickly. This song sounds just like the White Stripes. Between the lumbering guitar riffs, the pounding cymbal-heavy drums, the high-pitched vocals, and the skittering, squealing guitar solo, there's really nothing in this song that doesn't sound like something Jack and Meg could have come up with on White Blood Cells. But luckily for Southampton-based three-piece Band of Skulls, imitation is the greatest form of flattery, and Death by Diamonds and Pearls only serves to remind us how good blues-inflected garage rock from Detroit can sound. You can't help but move with these kinds of staccato riffs and the simple lyrics mean that the song will be stuck in your head for days. The effect is one of detached coal. Every note seems well placed to work its way into your head, just like a pop song, but much, much better. So, let's jump into these lyrics. She grew up in a nice neighborhood, but didn't do her no good, 'cause she's just the sum of her influence. Hell, and I can't tell you the difference. But the cracked windscreen on her car, something is telling you you don't know how lucky you are. And that's one of those lines where it does the speed up thing that you replicated, the da-da-da-da-da-da, how it scans a little bit differently.
Yeah.
You're just like the rest of those girls. They're all death by diamonds and death by diamonds and death by diamonds and death by diamonds and pearls. Death by diamonds and pearls. You got your figure all nice, but your heart stays colder than ice. You got 25 grand on the bubble, and you're the one telling me you don't think you're in trouble. I might be a fan of your insolence, but that don't make you the innocent. You're just like the rest of those girls. They're all death by diamonds and death by diamonds and death by diamonds and death by diamonds and pearls. 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 So the song's lyrics seem to depict a girl with a lot of money who is very well off, and this makes her become rude, cold-hearted, and spoiled. So yeah, sounds like he's dealing with a woman who is of good financial backing, but perhaps low morals, judging by the way he describes her in the song anyway. So,
Or at least low in character.
yes, low in character. I suppose you could have morals and be low in character. But yeah, so there you have it. That is the track by them. I wanted to give you sort of a peep into a slightly rougher version of the band that you had heard. That's to take nothing away from Bruises and that album Sweet Sour. I think it's still a really great album. But this precedes it, and the two together, I think, are a great debut and sophomore effort by a band that really has a lot of cool sound going for it. If it is perhaps, I don't even want to say derivative, but there definitely are shades to other groups that we've heard most explicitly in this one, I think, the White Stripes. So there also is a little bit of a, while their picture hangs behind me, there's a little bit of the Black Keys to their sound as well, that I would also make note of. But anyway, you had a grin on your face. What were you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, well, both the White Stripes is nothing new or original at all. It's just timing, isn't it? When they came out, was nothing else like it. Same with Brothers, same with the Strokes. Yeah, these bands all reflect people that came before them.
Yeah, exactly. But they didn't come within a decade before them, which is the hurdle that these guys have to leap. Because you're right. I mean, the state of music when the early White Stripe stuff came out, it was coming off the tail of the tales of like
Yeah, we've been
rap
there a
rock
few
and all
times,
that,
haven't we? Yeah.
that new metal stuff, and it was like, holy shit, a return to form for rock and roll. How refreshing. So yeah, you're right. Timing is the only thing working against them. Aside from that, they sound great. This song is really fun to listen to. And again, I'll say it again, those first two albums are really worth checking out. So, John, thank you so much for giving him a little bit of your time today. Do appreciate
Yeah,
it.
my pleasure.
Guys out there in the listening audience, let us know if you're familiar with Band of Skulls, either of those two albums I alluded to or any of their subsequent works up until 2019. It'd be interesting to figure out what they're doing now without two of the three members. I assume that he's still writing, but has maybe a band that he tours with when he's doing shows. Because yeah, I haven't caught any information related to how they currently stand outside of just Marston. So, but yeah, give us a shout down in the comments field if there's anything else that we should be checking out, guys like this, or if you have any, if they conjure up any other bands. I know John and I mentioned White Stripes, Led Zeppelin, the Black Keys. What else did you guys get from these guys? I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this. Also, like, share, and subscribe if you'd be so inclined. We really do appreciate it. It helps us over here with the channel and growth. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And hopefully John and I will catch all y'all in growing numbers on the next installment of the Audiophiles. We'll see you later, guys.